Good morning, esteemed guests. My name is Darbaz Nebaz. I am a senior student studying international relations here at the American University of Kurdistan. I would like to begin by welcoming our esteemed guests, His Excellency Deputy Prime Minister of the Kurdish Regional Government, Mr. Qubat Talabani, His Excellency Deputy Speaker of the Kurdish Parliament, Mr. Heyman Horami, His Excellency former Foreign Minister of France, Mr. Bernard Kouchner, and distinguished guests. I kindly welcome you all to the American University of Kurdistan. It is an honor to stand before you today to present AUK's first Middle East Peace and Security Forum. This event is organized by the American University of Kurdistan and AUK Foundation. I would like to thank both KAR Group and Qaywan Group for sponsoring AUK's MEPS 2019. Also, we are very excited to announce that the MEPS Forum will be an annual AUK event. The Middle East Peace and Security Forum aims to contribute to the peaceful resolution of conflicts by building trust, sustaining a continuous curated and informal dialogue within regional and international politics and security community. AUK hosts a forum for the Middle East's most pressing political, security, and socio-economic challenges by bringing together an inclusive group of high-level decision makers, analysts, and practitioners to establish policy-relevant analysis that can address outstanding regional challenges. Now, I would kindly like to ask Dr. Honar Isa, Secretary of the Member of Board of Trustees, on stage to give his remarks.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. On behalf of the Board of Trustees and Organizing Committee and its Chair, Dr. Rania Majid, I am delighted to welcome you all to the American University of Kurdistan here in Duhok. We are honored to host you here for what will be the 2 days discussion and debates on the most pressing issues facing our region today. Peace and stability is something we cannot take for granted here in Kurdistan region. This building was developed in 2014 with the hope that it would serve as a center of excellence for our own communities. We were in the process of constructing the building, and ISIS was only 12 kilometers away, literally 12 kilometers away from the campus on the Mosul Dam. But we never stopped constructing the building because we believed and still believe that only through education we can actually fight the extremism. And education is only our most potent weapon to fight extremism in this part of the region. Our gathering here today is a testament to the process, to the progress we have made so far, and it's a testament to the sacrifices that our brave Peshmerga made for this part of the region. Peace and security is an objective that we often believe is something tasked to politicians and soldiers, but in fact, it is a collective effort that depends on the community of scholars, thinkers like you, and students. And so we're truly blessed and privileged to have you all with us here today, and wish you a constructive time here in Duhok. Before we start the first panel discussion, I just want to notify you that we have an exit on the corner of the building for any emergency evacuancy. So on your right side when you exit from this hall. And for this, I have the honor of calling His Excellency Deputy Prime Minister Deputy Prime Minister of Kurdistan region and His Excellency Minister Bernard Kushner to proceed to the stage for the first panel before the workshops are happening here, moderated by Dr. Ranj Al-Addin. Thank you very much, and I'm very honored to have you here, and I hope you're going to have a lovely time today and tomorrow. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests. Let me echo what Dr. Huna Issa has just told us all and say what a real privilege and honor it is to be at this glorious university campus. And I think we really do have an opportunity here today to kick off the conference by, I guess, going to the essence of its theme. It is a conference that has been put together to generate ideas, thoughts, analysis on regional peace and security. But of course, I always feel personally that it's a topic that is often addressed without focusing sufficiently, that is, on questions of good governance, on socioeconomics. So we have with us a distinguished panel of speakers, to say the least. We have His Excellency, the Deputy Prime Minister of the Kurdistan Regional Government, Kaykubat Talabani, and of course, the former Foreign Minister of France, His Excellency Bernard Kouchner. To kick things off, I'm going to ask His Excellency Kaykubat to really try and bridge this gap that I believe exists in the current debates on peace and security. Specifically, is it actually possible to talk of region-wide peace and security without first addressing matters at home? One could call this the basics, but in fact, if we look at what's happened in the Middle East over the past 10, 15 years, it could very plausibly be argued that the root of the many crises and conflicts in the region today, and of course, as we see closer to home in Baghdad, is of course the discontent, is of course the socio-economic grievances of the broader population and the communities. So I'll kickstart things by asking you, Kaykubat, on your thoughts. You have, of course, been somebody who has been on the front lines of the effort to champion reform since your stint in government over the past number of years. Not only have you had to deal with the question of reform at home, but that has been combined with the broader effort of combating ISIS and other terrorist groups. The floor is yours, Kaykubat.
Thank you, Kakaranch. أما دبواني برز زور خوش حالم ك لزانكوي أمريكي لكردستان أما دم أمرو بشتارم لم بانلا خوش حالم كما يكم سردان ما بو زانكوي جوانو كاريجرا دس خوشيتان ليكم داوام لكراو با إنجليزي قصب كم ويا أجر إجازة بن خوشبختانە کەمێک ئینگلیزیم لەبیر ماوە بۆیە هیوادارم ئێمە بتوانین گفتوگۆیەکی باش و دەوڵەمەند و تەندروستمان هەبێ. Thank you, Ranj, for the introduction, and thank you all at AUK for hosting us and arranging this important event at this very important time. I think there is a direct correlation between governance, good governance, and stability, and obviously prosperity. I remember when the Iraqi government, this Iraqi government, was first formed, and the first time I had the opportunity to meet with Dr. Adil Abdul Mahdi as Prime Minister of Iraq. In our first meeting, he asked me, what is going to be my biggest challenge? And I said to him, governance. Governance is always the biggest challenge, and the first challenge that any government faces when they take office or when they're carrying out their work. Because if you do not govern well, then you are not serving your population well. And when you do not serve your population well, you have an unhappy population. And when you have an unhappy population, then you obviously have an unhappy country or an unhappy society. So I think that it has been too often the case over the last 16 years in Iraq, where successive Iraqi governments have blamed, or not blamed, but have covered over the shortcomings of governance and pointed to a larger, more strategic, geopolitical problem, right? Whether it's regional conflicts or Iran-US tensions or war with ISIS or a whole host of reasons, or some would say excuses, for not tackling the real issues in the country. And now we're at a point where the public in Iraq, for example, are not taking these excuses anymore. And they are airing their grievances, and they're asking for the basics. Because most citizens, they may be interested in the geopolitical issues. They may be concerned about regional tensions. But ultimately, most citizens of every society care about their immediate surroundings. They care about the basic services. They care about water, electricity, healthcare, education. They care about the hope for prosperity and economic development. They care about improving their lives, their families' lives, and the lives of those closest and dearest to them. And that's been missing in a lot of these debates when we talk about regional security and regional issues, regional political issues. In Kurdistan, when we faced our series of crises in 2014, when we had the fiscal shock of the budget cuts from Baghdad, when we had the physical shock of the war with ISIS, when we had the humanitarian shock of the wave of refugees and IDPs, which Duhok, where we are today, suffered the most because of that influx. And we had the added shocks of the drop in oil prices, which completely expanded our fiscal deficit. And you add to that the political shocks that we sometimes bring upon ourselves as Kurds. We were facing an untenable and unimaginable situation. So we had to reach for reform. We had to realize that take a look inside and see what is it we must do in this point. Yes, our brave soldiers and security forces were fighting on the front lines. We didn't have the money to build projects and do what ministers like to do, which is to cut ribbons and lay foundation stones for projects. We didn't have that luxury anymore at our disposal. So we had to do some soul searching and realize that what is within our control as a government is to do things better, which is why we started the reforms. We looked at implementing a painful austerity program. We looked at how to cut other expenses. We looked at how to increase revenues. We looked at how to make our expenditure process more robust. We found ways to eliminate illegal employees or people that were illegally receiving more than one salary. We eliminated ghost employees. We started attacking these big issues, which were painful. And I think this is another element. Reform is not easy, right? Reform is sometimes painful. And too often when countries try to reform, and we're seeing this in Baghdad right now, to address people's grievances, they're trying to throw money at problems. Hire more people, give people more allowances, give people more homes, build people more homes. This may be a short-term fix, but this is not going to create political, economic, and fiscal stability in the country. Restructuring governance will, streamlining government services will, making transparent government services will, improving the quality of healthcare services, education services, and other essential services. This will make an impact, and some of this involves redirecting funds away from just throwing money at problems, but partnering with the private sector, looking at opening up your economy to others, because ultimately you look at countries that have unhappy populations, right? You see them, you see their governance models not being good, and look at countries that are causing problems around the world. They're never countries with happy populations. Countries that are causing problems around the world are usually the countries with unhappy populations. So this is a lesson to all of us at a regional, national, or broader regional context. Fix your home, fix governance at home, worry about securing your home, worry about providing services to your people, worry about creating the most jobs you can for your people, not just in the public sector, but in the private sector. And you will likely have a much more conducive, healthy environment with a more healthy population, a more psychologically healthy population, which will then elect, I think, a more psychologically healthy government, which then won't go on foreign escapades and cause problems beyond their borders. So I reiterate, there is a direct correlation between good governance and stability at a local or regional or international level.
Thank you. Thanks very much indeed, Kakubar. And I like how you ended on the note of geopolitics and the question of borders. And I think we will most certainly come back to you after the Minister's remarks to perhaps try to get into the specifics, let's say, of some of your efforts in government. Minister, let me come to you as a former foreign minister of a major European actor, country. One looks at Europe and sees that Europe is in fact also engulfed in its own crisis. There is no comparison, of course. Crises in this part of the world does tend to be violent, does tend to sometimes lead to immense bloodshed. I'd like to ask you, as a former foreign minister, what you see as being the starting point, I guess, zooming out from Kaqbad's remarks. What could be the starting point for building regional stability? The floor is yours.
Easy question. Well, I'm certainly not the best man to answer to such a question, because since 74, Kubat was not born.
No.
Were you?
No. I wasn't.
I've
even
been
in the
involved
making.
in this region always in war. So certainly we have to talk about peace, certainly. But it is very difficult to talk about stability and good governance, etc., in the middle of such a crisis, one after the other. But, in a way, congratulations. Congratulations, because as one of our friends said yesterday, this is the only place where the university, American University of Kurdistan, invite everybody, despite of his nationality, everybody coming from Middle East. So you are open, and from one little success to another, and this is not a little success, the university. This is a big, big success. something is certainly changing in the behavior of the people. But talking about Europe, this is difficult. Very not the idea of Europe. The idea of Europe is easy and this is a dream. But facing this particular last year's difficulties, Europe didn't react the same way. On the contrary, we were more or less opposed to, in between several countries, and certainly we had to face Mr. Putin. And Mr. Putin, we have to face him not because his role is very important. That is not, it is a good role or bad role. This is very important. He is the key man of this region. And as we had this problem in Ukraine with Mr. Putin, and he invaded, you remember, Crimea, and certainly is part of the war in the eastern part of Ukraine. So we have a meeting the 9th of December, I believe, with Madame Merkel and the President of Ukraine and Vladimir Putin and the French. So it's easier in a way to talk to Putin about your region, the Middle East, than to talk about Europe, because in Europe there is a real blockade for the time being. So I want also to underline what Kubat said very wisely. And to summarize, I let you think about this very bad sentence. Easy to be an expert, uneasy to be a politician. Okay, when you are an expert, you are telling us the good way, the truth, and of course, you insist. It's a group of pressure, etc. But this is not the real way. This is not the real life. When I became, by chance or not, by misfortune, the foreign minister of France, with my knowledge of Kurdistan and my friends everywhere, etc., in all the countries, I was completely sure to do something to change the situation. Look at the situation. I don't know if it's worse or the same, but this is not that way. You have good recipes, but how to implement, this is completely a different life. Because you have to implement your external idea in foreign policy, but with your people, and to convince your co-citizen that it is very important to act in the neighbor's country or far country, Middle East. This is very, very difficult. We have our, not at the same level, not the same way, etc., but my country, France, in that day or yesterday, we had to face our little fight. By this month, last month, this little fight is called Yellow Jacket. Tell me what they are looking for. Tell me, it's very important to let the people know in France what they are looking for. But this is a sort of violence, very new in my country. So in the same time, and it was Saturday, last Saturday, it was a violent struggle in Paris, and Mr. Macron was visiting, I don't remember what he was visiting, but it was far from Paris. And so the people didn't understand. Well, this is not the subject, but the subject is certainly easy to advise, easy to perceive the real way and the real, let's say, key of one, even if it's a problem so difficult like Kurdistan. What is Kurdistan? The people in my country are always asking me, but you know Kurdistan, what's going on? But in which Kurdistan? What kind of Kurds? That even don't know There is Iranian Kurds, Iraqi Kurds, Syrian Kurds, and Turkish Kurds. So the beginning of the beginning is not known, not enough. And of course, stability and good governance is absolutely key points. There are, but you know the recipes of good governance? We know something. We are all in agreement. Corruption is not accepted. Bravo. Not accepted, but going on. Going on everywhere. So, as I told you that my first coming in here in Dohuk was in, no, not 74, a bit after. But it was a village, it was a little town. So the huge success you had in development, sort of a development, of course, is not enough like everywhere, not enough balance in between the poor and the rich, and etc. But a fantastic development. You were successful in, and you will be still successful. But in fact, the rest on the other side of the river Tiger, you were not talking with. And the people, the Syrian Kurds, they were not talking to you. So tell me the good recipe.
Thank you.
We all knew and we all know that it's better to talk to each other. And look at that. This is the result. Everybody is interested in the same topic. So it's my pain. I'm suffering of that, but suffering is not enough. But we cannot interfere. The French, the European, the American, in the same way.
Let me come right in, Minister, because I think you touch on a very good point there. I mean, you didn't actually answer my question. Let me put that very frankly.
The proof of a good diplomat, a skilled diplomat.
This is the
Precisely.
Exactly. Thank you very much. It is the first time I've someone say to me that I'm a good diplomat.
So let me try and, because I think my goal for this panel is to really turn it into a conversation-style discussion. So let me go back to you, Kalkobad. I did ask the minister what the starting point might be for regional peace and security. And we did hear from the minister that it is a colossal challenge, that there are all sorts of factors at play. It's a multifaceted challenge. Taking your remarks on the efforts you led domestically in Kurdistan for reform, what role can outside actors play? Is this something that can really be left to the region's own devices, left to Kurdistan's own devices, or is this something that really has to be a collective effort involving regional plus international actors?
I think there is an important role for the international actors, international organizations, friendly countries to play in reform. We were the first to admit we don't know everything. We still have a very big shortage of real economists in Kurdistan, for example, real skilled. We have great talent across our government, but we needed expertise. So we came to the EU and said, look, we need expertise in this area. We went to the US, and the US gave us some advisors that they paid for. The UK, the same. France, we're in touch with. The Netherlands are helping us now with agriculture reform. So yeah, absolutely, we can learn from experiences. Developed countries, strong countries, friendly countries, all have international development agencies which are filled with qualified people that have worked across the world in countries that are facing situations very similar to ours. So there's nothing wrong about not knowing something. It's wrong to not know something but then claim to know everything, which is too prevalent in the Middle East. It's almost shameful to not know something. Well, no, it's not shameful. In my opinion, it's shameful to not know something but then claim to know it. So I think that the foreign powers, friendly powers, can't fix problems. There has to be the political will to fix the problem, but they could certainly help with expertise. Just think of how much money has been spent on the so-called reconstruction of Iraq from 2003 until today. I mean, the number is staggering. It's in, Ken, help me, how many billions, if not tens and tens of billions of dollars have been spent on reconstructing Iraq. Where is it? If a tenth of that money had been spent on expertise that could be implanted into the ministries across the levels, from the deputy minister down to the most junior official in the government, you would by now, after 15 years, have a cadre of people in the government that would be skilled. Right? We hear all of this talk today. Well, okay, the demonstrators are unhappy with this government, so they want to get rid of Dr. Adel, they want to get rid of all the ministers. Okay, let's play this out. Dr. Adel gets annoyed, tomorrow he resigns, the 3 presidencies all resign, all the ministers resign. Who's going to form the next government? Those people demonstrating on the streets are not going to form the next government. The same parties that formed this government are going to sit in the same room they sat in to form the last government, and are going to form another government from the same people, from the same political parties, who are then just going to appoint ministers again, and it's not going to work. This man was an excellent minister. You make him a minister in one of the Iraqi ministries, he's not going to be able to fix that ministry. Because the problem is not at the minister level. The problem is much more deeper rooted in the system, especially when you have such a polarized political environment. I mean, in Kurdistan, we have inefficiency, we have bureaucracy, we have corruption, we have incompetence, we have all of that. But at the end of the day, if there is a director general that is causing me a problem within the system, I'm going to look at this director general, and he or she is either going to be PUK or KDP. Okay, so if he's PUK, I'm going to likely call that DG and say, hey, you're giving me a problem, stop doing this, or I'm going to remove you. If he's KDP, I'll call His Excellency the Prime Minister and say, Kak Masroor, this guy is giving us a headache. Please do something about it. It's manageable, right? But who's Adel going to call? Dr. Adel, the ministry has a DG from Sadr, from Badr, from Hikmah, from Maliki, from Abadi, from some Sunnis, from some other countries, maybe a couple of Kurds. Who is he going to call to fix that DG in that ministry that is probably doing things I was going to say she, but it's much more likely to be he, it shouldn't be doing. And that, I think this is, in my office, on my whiteboard, I have a sign, and I've written it, and I look at it every day, and I say, don't fix the unfixable. Right? There are some things that are just unfixable. But that doesn't mean you should avoid challenges, right? We looked at our Ministry of Finance. Our Ministry of Finance is in Kurdistan, it's a big, monstrous institution. Lots of employees, some great talent in that ministry, but also some dead wood in that ministry. And to think that I can turn around this ministry and turn it into a functioning, dynamic, young, energetic ministry in a year or two is unrealistic. But I can find the 10, 20, 30, 40 competent people in that ministry, empower them from the minister down to the bottom to create a delivery chain of excellence in that ministry, and then I can make that ministry function. And that, I think, nobody's tried to tackle this in Iraq, right? All of this money, I know the EU has spent millions on reform. I know the US has spent millions on reform. I know there's been even some advisors on decentralization, on transparency, on all of this. But all of this is tied in the ministry's office, and the minister looks at these people as their personal staff. And that there is this huge bureaucracy that goes from the ministry level to the provincial level, from the district level to the sub-district level, who is training and building capacity down that delivery chain. So that's where I would start. I would, obviously, there's problems in Baghdad. If we're looking at Iraq, You can't kill demonstrators, first and foremost. That's unacceptable, right? The people should be allowed to demonstrate, people should be allowed to air their grievances, and the government should have a channel of communicating back and forth with those people. But at the same time, parallel to this, there should be a real look at how to restructure the government to make it work. And that, again, will create, I think, a more functioning government. That's where I would start. I would always start at home. There's no point fixing neighbors and neighborhood problems if you can't fix your own house and your own problems.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Abdelbad. That's 7 or 8 starting points, in fact, and not just one. I did like your point on friendly countries helping Kurdistan, helping the region prosper and develop. But I will come back to you at some point, perhaps during the Q&A, to ask you about hostile countries and what sort of approach and strategies can be developed to engage them, and in fact, what they could be doing. Before I come to the audience, let me ask you, Minister, a similar question. What role can outside actors play when it comes to good governance in Iraq, in Kurdistan, in the region?
Well, I have to be very careful because after that I'm a diplomat and a snaky diplomat. No. Well, my dear, you're talking about what? The French or the European people or the external help? The French, my dear, coming back to the reality. First, different government means different policy in France. And I remember perfectly the time where Mr. Saddam Hussein was a close friend to France. Against my wish and against my knowledge, and I was particularly involved in the result of Mr. Saddam Hussein because I was close to the Kurdish people. So Mike, in that time, and without consulting anybody, we were furnishing helicopters and etc. during the war in between Iran and Iraq. We offered a sort of, it was a gift, 12 Tornado or 12, etc. fighters. And was it possible to convince this government to change its policy? No, because there was no political pressure coming from the people. The people, they were not so much interested. They were interested by their local problems, by the lack of jobs, but a lot of very important issues. And after a new government, after a long time, and we had, but I have no time to tell you that Mr. Mitterrand was something else, completely different, because of Madame Mitterrand and your humble servant, we were closer to the Kurds. But for Chirac, it was not necessary. He didn't know, he was not interested in. Then Sarkozy came, then François Hollande came, and today this is Mr. Macron. As the external policy is not completely the core, the heart of the people's preoccupation, you have to restart a sort of education, propaganda, TV, film. You have to start from the scratch. So, using your personal involvement or your personal knowledge about one particular country is long. You need time. Time is a fantastic dimension of politics. This is unimaginable. The people change. Oh, yes, you have talked about. No, it was not the case. You were in Kosovo. Well, this is very difficult. Second, is it possible to get a European agreement? Because France is certainly a very important country, but not so much. And we have Europe. We were working on Europe for that reason, to get a real weight, to have a real strength in between, at least the American and the Russian, the American and China, etc. But I don't want to say very bad words on European diplomacy, but there is no European diplomacy. We should be together, the 26 or 27, depends on Brexit, in agreement on the foreign policy. But this is very difficult. All the European countries, they have their own interest, trade interest, political interest in terms of historical relation, etc. This is very, very, very infrequent to be together. I wouldn't want to give you too much quickly the key problem of our continent. Migration. Migration. It's a shame the way France didn't react enough. It's a shame, my personal shame. We were able, when it was the boat people in the China Sea, 12,000 kilometers far, we were able to send boats, rescue ship, and we were unable to send them in the Mediterranean Sea, our sea, where our children are making sand castle on the beach. Why? Because there is a threat coming from extreme rightist people, like it was formerly before the Second World War, and everybody was fighting, and all the political discussion and all the political, even before the election program of preparation of election, we were absolutely blocked by immigration. So, when Madame Merkel, and it was the honor of Europe, she saved the honor of Europe, opened the door to 1 million people coming from Middle East, but also coming in the same time from Afghanistan and from Africa, etc. In my country, we accepted a bit more than 5 or 10,000. And it was not European fault, it was one country by country, the nation's fault. I remember when there was a special meeting of the European Chief of Staff, Head of State. They separate and they offer to all, one after the other, all the European countries, with comparison with the level of unemployment, the richness, the number of consider, etc. We were supposed, the French people, to accept 7,000. It was nothing. We are 70 million. It has not been done. So, you know, another time, the wish of the people, and if you are obliged to present your candidacy to an election, you also have to talk about the people. Unfortunately, on that particular problem, they didn't change at all. And this is still the same problem. And Brexit was partly on migration. And all the coming elections in Europe are absolutely blocked by this problem, this false problem.
Thank you, Minister. And speaking of the people, I think this is a chance to come to the audience now for their questions. You did make the point that there is no European diplomacy, and I'm pretty sure our European friends in the audience have a few things to say about that, Minister. So let's come now to you, the audience, for your questions. William Morris. And
Yes,
can you, please identify yourself and your organization?
William Morris, Next Century Foundation. Kakubat, you mentioned the problem, the mushkila in Baghdad. You really didn't quite mention the solution. You seem to imply that Premier Adel should continue. And meanwhile, we've got demonstrators at the gates of Basra Port now. I mean, things are not very healthy. And one of the requests that they have is electoral reform, constitutional reform even possibly. Do you see that as a possibility, at least, if they are not to be allowed another election?
I don't see constitutional reform or an amendment to the Constitution as a solution to the problems of Iraq. I actually think that the fact that the Constitution of Iraq has not been implemented is a problem. that has created many of the problems that we see in Iraq. This is again, it's another red herring. We can't get electricity working, we can't get water running, we can't get healthcare services fixed, so why don't we amend the Constitution? What article of the Constitution today prohibits or limits electricity reform? What article of the Constitution prohibits or limits healthcare reform? Nothing of it. It's another red herring that the political system has created to create a distraction so as to not address the real issues. Let's embroil the country in a 3-year debate about the Constitution when we've had the last 10, 12 years of not implementing the last one. It is, I find this debate on the Constitution purely a distraction to what the real issues are. Yeah, I'm sure you can look at the electoral system, the electoral model. I'm hearing district representation. In fact, I mean, what is a key article of the existing constitution that has not been implemented, which is the second chamber. There is supposed to be a bicameral legislative system in Iraq, but there is only one right now. The so-called, let's say, Senate of the Iraqi system has not been put into place. So there is a key institution that should be representing the people in a way maybe that the Council of Representatives is not functioning. So let's address that if you want to talk about the Constitution. So I felt that I did try to address what should be done, which is fix the governance structure, go into the ministries, go into I probably won't want to take up the time again by reiterating my vision for fixing the problems, which is actually addressing the real root cause of the people's unhappiness, which comes down to basic services, lack of jobs, and also lack of security in the country.
Thanks very much. We have another question. Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Felis. For those who have forgotten me over the last few weeks, formerly legal representative in Kurdistan, currently here in personal capacity. First of all, I completely agree with nearly everything you said, and I think your analysis was spot on. To your point on EU foreign policy, I think that is fair enough as well. I'll talk about this more tomorrow in my own panel, but I think it is true that the Europeans were hesitant to even think about such a thing as power or projecting power. We were hoping that soft power, including governance issues, would balance this, which I think didn't work out. And if you see the new program of the incoming Commission, you will for the first time actually see repeatedly the term power, which gives me a degree of hope. We have to see how it plays out. Question to you, Karkuba. I think you very correctly talked about the governance issues. And Ranj, you asked about sort of how can capacity building and Europeans and those come in. I think in the long run, development capacity building, particularly the Europeans have a lot of experience, and we have helped you under your guidance. You have more experience than anyone else. But how can we find anything that would work as economic stabilization measures, just as we did post-war humanitarian stabilization measures? How can we come in and do sort of this interim, short to mid-term governance stabilization measures? What ideas do you have in that regard?
For Kurdistan or for Iraq, or for both?
Both.
For Kurdistan, I look at we as the government are supposed to execute policies that are usually set by political parties that should have political ideologies. You're conservative, or you're liberal, you're socialist, or you're communist, or you're something in between. This doesn't exist in Iraq as a whole. There really isn't, except for the communists. In fairness to the communists of Iraq and to Kurdistan, they're the only parties that really has a visible political ideology, that has a visible economic ideology. The rest do not have it. And we're transitioning, in Kurdistan, we're transitioning from a revolution, from the mountain revolutions where as His Excellency Bernard first met our leadership and met our people, to a system of civilian governance. We haven't fully made that transition yet. Look at many of the political parties. We still have in the ranks of the leadership some brave warriors who fought in the mountains, who were revolutionaries. And this is, I'm not saying this is a bad thing. I'm saying this in the case of a transition from a revolution to civilian governance. Now, there are many countries, many European countries, that have made this ideological transition, whether it's east of the wall, they've transitioned from a degree of communism to some sort of democracy today, or some heavy socialism to something. There are countries that have had examples that we can learn from, because ultimately what we lack here is a political ideology. We have this national ideology, we have this ethnic ideology, and we're Kurds and we're Kurdistanis, and this is the forefront of everything we do and say. But we lack, the politics, real politics based on a political ideology. So I think that definitely there could be help in this transition. It's a transition of the mindset. A transition of the mindset where, even our Islamists here are socialists. Islamic parties in Kurdistan have politburos. So helping and down the bureaucracy, understanding that the private sector is not the enemy. Private sector can fill a gap that I, as the government, cannot. So how do I change the mindset of my executives, my bureaucrats, my political parties, to look at the private sector as a potential source of assistance to plugging the gaps that we have here? So again, learning from your models, learning from your experiences, countries that maybe 20, 30 years ago went through various transitions, similar to the transitions that we're still going through now. And I think so. There is, that there's a lot that can be done. I think with Iraq, it's a bit more, again, as usual, it's more complicated, because the regional interference in Iraq is stronger than your interference in Iraq, and will always be stronger than your interference in Iraq. So whatever you try to do in Iraq, it'll probably be influenced by the regional interference.
And that's something you think should be countered, balanced, outmatched?
I think that, if I were in Baghdad, I would seek all the help that I could get from whoever that was willing to help me, but it would have to be my vision, right? They should help me implement my vision, the vision I have for the country. And I think that's what's missing in Iraq right now, is the Iraqi vision. What does Iraq want to do? And then, when Iraq knows what it wants to do, it can find the right partners to help it execute its vision. I think too much, whether in 2003 it was one vision, or whether it's 2019 it's another vision, too much of what is being discussed are other people's visions and not Iraq's own.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Kapabad. Minister, before I come to you, let's take one final question, and then we can incorporate all the questions together. Please, sir.
My name is Karol Foshnau. I am president of American Kurdish Research Institute. My question to both of you. My name is Karol Foshnau. I am president of American Kurdish Research Institute. My question to both of you: do you think that a deal of the century will solve the problem of the Middle East? As you know, deal of the century is a proposal suggested by Gary Kushner, and it's just, I think it's just to solve the problem between Palestine and Israel, without mentioning the Kurdish problem. Without mentioning the Kurdish problem and without solving the Kurdish problem, do you think that the deal of the century will make Middle East peace and secure? Thank you.
Thanks very much. Minister.
no.
No, Mr. Minister, Your Excellency.
Up to the
You
minister.
have engaged in such deals.
No,
in
no,
the past.
I will comment.
Deals
what
of the
is to say.
decade, deals of the century. Come on, Mr. Minister, please.
No, please. This is your country. I will comment.
I don't think the deal of the century is going to fix all of the problems in the Middle East. I think every country has its own problem. Some problems of some countries are connected to other countries' problems. But I sound like a broken record here. Fix your home, fix the problem in your home, and you make. I see this. I saw this a lot with the U.S.-led reconstruction post-Iraq nation-building process. They tried to fix the problems. Right? Fallujah was a huge problem, and for years, the US-led coalition, the Europeans, everybody tried to fix Fallujah. Fix it militarily, fix it politically, fix it economically, fix a problem, right? Most, developed countries like to fix problems, and the way they fix problems is a logical way. There's a checklist, right? How many hospitals can we build? How many schools can we build? Can we, and I kept telling them, I remember at the time, this is not going to be fixed this way, because there's credibility issues, there's political issues, there's interference issues. Make places that are working work better, right? You've got many parts of this region that are trying to do better. Make them work first. Show some successes in areas that are happy to receive help, right? Jordan is always willing to receive help. And they get help, but they're always willing. Make Jordan better. Help them be better, right? Provide better governance for them to make it better. Help Kurdistan be better. Make our reforms better. You start building islands of success around this region, you begin to isolate problems. Too often, people have tried to fix problems by hitting the problem head on. And logic in the Middle East do not go together. Logic can be applied in Austria, right, Clarice? By and large, in Germany, occasionally in France.
Occasionally.
Right? We look at Western countries, Americans, other developed countries, look at things very logically. This is an illogical part of the world. And so you have to be creative in solutions.
Thank you. Thanks, Kakubad. Minister?
Fortunately, you were speaking before me. I agree completely. Sanction will not solve any problem. But this is the last decision before war. How to react against something in political or economical nature, etc. It's up to the people, it's up to the country, it's up to the knowledge, the mindset, as you said. But can we help in another way? Is it possible to make an economical pressure? Is certainly the last moment. Look what happened. This is always the good example in South Africa. It was because of the decided sanction from all the world that the political system has changed. This is not the same thing in Middle East. This is not the same thing in. We are not in charge. We have to separate. Sorry, the problem of ISIS and the problem of all the country in Middle East, one after the other, usually opposed to the other. So we were able to decide unanimously that Daesh was not your favorite, our favorite, and it was a danger for the rest of the world. Fortunately, the Kurdish people react and fought for us We were helping them in terms of economy, in terms of material, etc. But they decided. And this is not the end. Because in the same time, it got much more difficult to accept the people in the camps and the refugees, and as I told you, migration was the problem, etc. So we are facing, in the same time, for the same problem, a lot of center of decision, political pressure, and that's why I'm coming back, sorry, to the lack of European decision. How can we, now we are facing the position, NATO exists. Turkey is a member of NATO. So are we supposed to fight one of these days against Turkey? I mean, it seems just impossible even to imagine. So this sort of knot of contradiction is very new. Middle East was easy to understand, not easy to solve, easy to understand in the former version. Now, the one country is opposed to the other everywhere. Iran, Iraq, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, etc. Do you know a perfect, let's say, general decision? This is very difficult, dear experts. Very difficult. And in the same time, we are facing, we had a strong coalition, yes, with Germany, but also with the UK. And now UK is leaving from Europe in the same time. Do you have a recipe, a solution? We are crossing very troubled time.
Thank you.
And when I was telling you about Vladimir Putin, he knows the way. And I'm talking now by the so-called Mr. Trump. He doesn't know the way.
Thanks very much, Minister. Kakoubat, I don't want to end this panel with a note on Vladimir Putin. So I'm now coming to you for a brief 20-second intervention that can allow us all to leave this hall with a sense of optimism.
No. Breathe, please.
I'm optimistic about Kurdistan. I'm optimistic about what we will achieve in the next 4 years. We have a very clear agenda. The agenda is centered around reform, around building institutions that can deliver. There is great synergy between the Prime Minister and myself. The team is gelling well. We have prioritized what we need to do. We have a clear vision, and we're going to do whatever we can to deliver on that vision. We are in troubled waters. We're going to get hit from the left. We're going to get hit from the right. We're going to get hit from this country. We're going to get hit from that country. We're going to get abandoned by many countries. We'll probably have more conflict, yeah, but we will continue to be stubborn as we have been. We'll continue to be resolute in the way that we have been. We will continue to work to overcome our internal differences, which we must, and this is something we occasionally will need guidance, help from our friends around the world, but we will enact real reforms that will improve electricity, that will improve the quality of healthcare, that will improve the quality of education, that will improve the quality of our universities, that will improve the number of jobs in the private sector, that will, I think, lead to a happier population here in Kurdistan. Now, we will do this alone if we have to. We would rather do it with the support of our friends around the world, and we will show Iraq and the region and our friends how it should be done. And I believe that.
Thank you. Thanks very much indeed, Kakoubat. And thank you to the audience for being so patient, for your remarks. I'd like you to join me in thanking His Excellency Kakoubat, His Excellency Bernard Kouchner as well. Thanks very much indeed.
Don't give up.